Okay. Hello to everyone. Good morning and happy Sabbath. I'm glad that you were able to join us for Sabbath study today once more. And I hope and pray that all of us will be blessed by the end of this study. So to begin the study, let's open a word of prayer. Loving God in heaven, thank you for being so good to us, for having mercy upon us, for showing us your grace, oh God, your character, so beautiful. We long to become like you. And we thank you for Jesus Christ who came to show us the way back to heaven. As we continue to follow him in this movement at this present time, we ask for your guidance, for light, we ask for the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, the Lateran. We ask that we may be able to clearly understand where we are today on the reform lines, and also that we may be able to, by so doing, be on your side. So I pray for each one and their family. I pray for those who are unable to join us, that they may receive the same blessing as well. And for the leaders of this movement and for everyone in the movement. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so welcome back to part 2 of the study that I began some weeks ago. And so if you remember, the aim of the study, what we wanted to do is to trace ourselves on the line to our present time to find out where we are on the reform line. And we began to do so by beginning in the chapters of Revelation 13 and 17, and began there, and we took a journey through the history of this movement, since 1989, the prophetic studies that uh, we came across and put in record that helped us to move along to where we're at today. All right, so and these studies, as I mentioned the last time, they are handpicked studies. We know that we covered a whole heap of Bible studies, prophetic studies, but these ones are the ones that I pick out in particular for us to kind of guide us to where we want to reach at the end. So these studies were mainly from Elder Jeff, Farminder, a couple of them, some of the information that we'll share, and the majority of it is from Elder Text. Okay, and that saying, I also want to just let you know that it's Acts 27 that will hold all these studies together. So Acts 27 weaves through all these studies, and it's that particular study that will bring us to where we are at this present time. Also, I don't know about you, but last week with the presentation from Elder Farmer there, I was kind of thrown off on my conclusions, what my studies were aimed to bring us to. And so that sent me back to the drawing board. I was convinced by Elder Terry's study on pinpointing the beginning of the Sunday law we mark. but due to what he pointed out that you cannot import the biblical meaning of flood to the story of Paros, particularly to Maximus Gorgias. So that's breaking the rule, and so we'll see how we could make an adjustment. So again, I invite you to participate. If you have questions, feel free to ask, stop me and ask. Inputs are accepted and invited and appreciated. Also corrections. If I'm saying something that is not correct according to the methodology, I appreciate correction. I don't claim to have everything right. Okay, so I just want to begin by reviewing what we just a little bit of what we covered the last time. The word. All right. So, like I said, we looked at Revelation 13, and that helped us to understand that that prophecy is designed to help us, or God's church, beginning from the time of the end. Okay. Looking forward to a time that Ellen White coined as the Sunday law. All right, and we know that the time of the end began in 1798, has been proven more than 3 testimonies. And we're looking to understand, the aim is to understand when is the Sunday law, because according to Revelation 13, it's at the Sunday law when this beast that rises up before 1798 but takes power in 1798 transforms from a lamb-like beast to speaking as a dragon or becoming a dragon power. All right. And it's during that time that an image is made by the people, suggested by the government, and this image is given life and is worshipped. All right. And that brings the mark of the beast, which is completely contradictory to the third angel's message, which the message that warns that whoever received this mark will worship the image of the beast will not receive the seal of God and subsequently be destroyed. Okay, so that's the importance of this particular chapter, and so that's why we need to understand this chapter. Another chapter that we looked at, chapter 17, which also tells us the same story, but from a different perspective. This one has to do with a lamb-like beast. And this one has to do with a sixth kingdom. Same story, but from a different perspective, beginning in 1788 and taking us down to the climax, which we know as the Sunday law. All right, so then we went to the book of Daniel, we went to the book of Daniel and we looked at Daniel chapter 11. And in particularly verse 40, and we see that verse 40 also brings us to verse 41. And verse 40 entirely covers also 1798 to the Sunday law. Okay. But then this is a really broad time frame. And so God revealed to us that verse 40 also has, this is A, also has a return of the king of the north who comes back. He receives a deadly wound in 1798, but comes back. Well, we know it is the USA that becomes the king of the north after the papacy. And it takes revenge. And so that helps us to bring ourselves even closer, because then there's another time at the end that was given to us, not in the Bible, but it was given to us as we studied, that also help us to be able to see in our time the progression of the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Okay, so that was very helpful as we studied along. And then our minds were led to review the history of the Millerites, in particularly Revelation chapter 10. And so this has to do with the Millerite history. All right, so we're going to send back to the world part, to the world parts. And in going back to the world part, we were able to see the repeat of Daniel 11 verse 40. We were able to see verse 40b being repeated. Also in connection with the Millerite history being repeated. And in so doing, we were given another remark, which turned out to be 9/11, 2001, September 9, 2001. And the purpose again for that is for us to be able to understand the waymark of the Sunday law and to be prepared as God's people to give a message and also to find ourselves on God's side. Okay, so a movement was born in 1989. The work of this movement is to receive God's message, change message, first, second, and third message, prepare ourselves, and also prepare to give this message to those who are lost in the world. Of course, it has to do with the message goes to the church and then to the world. So that includes the Seventh-day Adventist church, what we know as the Levites, and then to the Netherlands, to the world. All right, so so we reached that far, and then we realized that this span is still, there's still not enough information. It's too broad, and we began searching more. We're digging for more truths, and God led us to study of Ezra, chapter 7, particularly verse 9. And in Ezra, we were given We were given two more waymarks in here. All right. Also, we were given fractals, right? And the fractals had to do with the line of the priests, line of the Levites, and the line of the Netanims. Okay. All these are fractals of the big line, the line of the 144,000, which again we got from the study of Daniel 11, part A, part B. So the line of the 144,000 began 1989, 9/11 given to us, or these two given to us, and then we have the Son of Law, the Spirit of Prophecy, and the Bible, close of probation, and the second coming. Okay, so these three are fractals of this, and by this light that has been opened up, we were able to navigate even further and closer into the development of the message and the effect of it upon the church, on us as a movement known to be the priest, and the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who are the Levites, and then it also helped us to understand the external events that were also in effect preparing the Netanims to receive this everlasting gospel or this message of salvation. Okay, so that's how beautiful it all turned out. Praise God for his leading. And so these two waymarks that were given to us, again, it had to do in the study of a repetition of the Millwright history. We found out that these two waymarks were midnight and midnight cry. Okay. Can anyone remind us of how we were able to make this connection? How were we able, from the study or the review of the Millwright history, were able to come up with midnight and midnight cry? From what particular event or development during that history that helped us or brought us to understand that these two waymarks returns on our reform line? How was that? How did we come to that conclusion? Anyone?
In Millwright history, midway was
so let me just lay it out for a minor. Okay, so go ahead.
Samuel Snow preaching in the Boston Tabernacle, July 21st. Okay. The message is on the second Advent, and then repeating that in August 15th for the last time at the Exeter camp meeting, where even more detail was added in.
And what triggered out this study, this exciting study, or this search for light and truth? Where did it all begin? On what date? Or what caused it to, to swell.
You know, like Lucas, I'm drawing a blank. I wasn't sure if it was like the revolutions. I know it was the midpoints, I think, that sort of started because there were midpoints with so many different things. But sorry, maybe somebody else knows.
I remember,
Talking about
oh,
1840?
yeah, the prediction. Sorry, go ahead.
Who was that? Can you repeat, please?
Are you talking about 1840? Like the impetus, the fall of the Ottoman Empire?
1840, August 11th. What happened there? It was the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Okay. So that was what we know as the test that proved the study of William Miller, where he was coming to this conclusion, or he came to this conclusion that in Bible prophecy a day presents a year, right? And excuse me, he was looking, his conclusion or his studies led him to believe that from applying this methodology day for a year, he would be able to calculate the second advent of Christ. Well, we know that it wasn't really that, it was supposed to be Christ moving from the holy to the most holy. But that was what propelled his study and brought it to such a movement, right? To flourish. So time went on from 1840. If you notice, then they took us to the year 1844. So I would like to stick in this year 1844, and in particularly with the work of Samuel Snow, taking on from where William Miller left off. What would this waymark be? Besides being August 11, 1840, what waymark is this in 1844? According to when we compare it to our history or our reform line.
April 19th, 1844.
So that's April 19th, 1844. Okay, so then we have July 21st, August 15th, same here, 1844, and that all take us to October 22nd, right?
22nd, yeah, 1840.
1844. Okay, so when we look at this, this line event, what brought this event? What message brought this event that we see here? What message arrived in April 19th that created a swell? Does anyone remember? Will be the second angel's message. Sorry, someone say something. Go ahead.
No, that's okay, Lucas. I was just going to say what the April 19th sort of indicated, but yeah, the second angel's message arriving.
So that's what Samuel Snow took on, right? The second angel's message. And he began searching further to understand what we know to be October 22nd, 1844. It was him. And during this course of development, swelling of this message, what did the pioneers call this particular remark as they journeyed through the understanding or the opening up of the light of the second angel's message. What did they call this waymark? You
Midnight
consider
cry.
repeat, please.
Midnight cry.
Midnight cry. Are you sure?
Midnight
Where-
Cry at August 15th.
Where would be the midnight cry? It's the correct answer, but would you put it here? So the question is, what goes here and what goes here? So where would you put the midnight cry?
August 15th.
August 15th. All right, so midnight cry goes here. So what comes here? What came before the midnight cry, according to those experiencing the work of the second angel's message? It will be what always comes before midnight cry.
Midnight.
Again, we're asking the question: how did we get these two remarks? So it would be midnight, right? So this will be midnight, and August 15th. The waymark of August 15th is represented as midnight cry. So when we took this Millerites history and we brought it to our reform line, remember we were asking for light to understand the Sunday law. We were given 1989, not by the Bible or the spirit of prophecy, but by searching, by God's revelation. We were given 1989, we were given 9/11. We want to know the Sunday law, so we asked for more light, and these two waymarks were given to us. Okay.
Luke, if I could just add in terms of the
Sure.
if I could just add in terms of the midnight waymark, it was based on the parable of the 10 virgins in Millerite history. Is that correct? Behold, your bridegroom cometh.
Yes. Yep. And also it had to do with Samuel Snow going back and studying the calendars, right? And the Jewish feast days, okay? So all of that tied into the study that they went through, and God opened up the light for him to be able to give time here, right? So this is where time is given. And so because time is given there, then we understand that time is given here as well for the Sunday law, right? So if we just, okay, so here is where we could see where the Sunday law becomes very clear for us to be able to pinpoint it and to understand how it is, its development, where we were studying the development of it. And we were able to, or we are given light, enough light to be able to pinpoint it, to understand it and to identify it, is the word I'm looking for. All right, so this is what we were looking at in the last study. And so another study that I said we wanted to look at is Acts 27. Okay, and in Acts 27, because again, this has been very helpful, these two waymarks, the light of these two waymarks, brought a tremendous blessing to the movement. Great light. We rejoice in that light, but still we needed more information. We needed to understand the details of our history. And so God called Lourdes, he rose her up, And what did she do? With the same perform line that we were doing. What did she do? Again, going back to what transpired in during the course of our history in this movement, we can go back to 2016, and in 2016, when these two remarks were brought to our attention, also a study developed where we were taken back to Daniel 11, and in Daniel 11 we saw what? We saw two wars, right? What are the name of these two wars or two battles? They are Rapha and Panya, right?
Garcia and Panium.
Okay. And by looking at these two wars, we were able to hang them upon these two waymarks. All right, so this is the structure, this is a historical review, and we were shown by applying our correct methodology that these two wars in Daniel 11 could be hung upon these two waymarks. Okay, and so Dolores took that and she applied that understanding to the lines of the fractals. And what did that produce? It produced the study of started off with understanding Acts 27 and the ships representing the two ships representing the institutions of the USC and Seventh-day Adventist Church. And that led on into another study of Pyros, the history of Pyros. And so in the history of Pyros, instead of history of Pyros, also brought us to, we were able to understand two battles as well, or a history of battles. And from there, we were able to make applications. We began to review the revolutions and different battles that took place historically before 1989, and we were able to pinpoint these two earmarks by date. Okay, so Rapha turned out to be November 9th. This is 2019. And Panyam turned out to be what date? 2021. In the year 2021 was Panyam. All right. And so we'll get into that a little bit more and just laying it out. So that's it. That's the effect of the study of Acts 27 particularly, because again, Panyam lines up with the midnight cry, and from here we were able to see how the Sunday law looks like. Okay, so Acts 27 just blew open the portals for us to be able to fully understand how to be prepared for the Sunday law remark or test, Sunday law test. Okay, so I'll get into more details. I just want to, this is just a reminder of where we're at in the aim of the study. Is there any question? Do anyone have any question before we move on? Is this all clear? Are your memories refreshed? Okay, so
Yes.
okay, so let me just fix this. For the sake of time, I'm leaving out a lot of materials that made these studies very clear. Assuming that we all are fully aware of these studies and have done our homework to go over them and understand them as required. So, but if there's any question, anything isn't clear, or you don't understand what I'm doing, feel free to stop me and ask for clarification. All right, so the last time we stopped off, we stopped at looking at Isaiah 23 as well. So this was at the end of the study before time ran out. And what did we draw from Isaiah 23? We drew that Tyre equals who? Equals what power in Bible prophecy? Anyone? Tyre represents the papacy. What else did we see in Isaiah 23? If you want, you could take your Bible and go back there with me. Maybe refresh your memory on it. Okay. Isaiah chapter 23. Says the burning of Tyre, all the ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, nor entering in from the land of Kittim. It is revealed to them. All right, so we see also if you would go on, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over this chapter again, but we did go over some of the verses. And we see that in this chapter, if you take your time and go through it on your spare time, you will see also the ship of Tarshish, right? And what would the ship of Tarshish represent? Your ships of Tarshish in our time. Because what we are doing, we're just as how Elder Test took place. The story of Acts 27 of Paul's journey from Jerusalem or Alexandria to Rome. We also can do the same with different passages of scripture, just taking a historic event or a fulfillment and reapplying it to our story, to our line, in order for us to understand how it repeats, how history repeats, and how Bible prophecy can have dual or more than two fulfillments or effect. So the ship of Tarshish would represent the merchants of the earth. Okay. And again, here, just to reach the punchline of this chapter, we went on to verse 14 and 15. So if you will go there, All ye ships of Tarshish, for your strength is laid waste. And it shall come to pass in that day that Tyre shall be forgotten 70 years, according to the days of one king. After the end of 70 years shall Tyre sing as an harlot. Okay, so reading on to verse 17. Take an harp, go about the city, thou harlot that has been forgotten, make sweet melody, sing many songs, that thou mayest be remembered. And it shall come to pass after the end of 70 years that the Lord will visit Tyre, and she shall turn to her hire, and shall commit fornication with all the kingdom, of the world upon the face of the earth. All right, so if we take this chapter and make an application of it, we will see upon the line that this chapter is telling us the same story in an application from 1798 to the Sunday law. Okay? And then we see that the merchants of the earth, they go from, if we would just go to another prophetic book for a second witness of the same story, if you go to Ezekiel 27, you will see that the same ship of Tarshish, they do something, or something comes upon them. So they begin to flourish by way of trade and economic success. Reading from verse 12, let's look at verse 12. Tarshish was the merchants by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead. They traded in their fairs, Okay, so they're very prosperous, these merchants of the earth. But then something comes upon them in verse 25 and 26. The ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market, and thou was replenished and made very glorious in the midst of the seas. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind had broken thee in the midst of the seas. All right. So what we see again, if we take this and make this, bring closer to our history in our line, we see a harbinger. This same 9/11, which was first given to us, or is given to us from the history of 1840, as was mentioned, with the fall of the Ottoman Empire. We see another witness of this waymark. So this waymark has been established, where we see the east wind having its effect on the economy of the king of the north. Okay, so bear in mind, this king of the north now is the USA. Okay, so we see that during a period of economic success and flourishing, the east wind breaks this economic success, and we know from historical history, from the events, from current, recent events, sorry, that took place September 11th, 2001, and it had an effect all the way to 2008, right? But this, we understand from that study, we understand that this is a harbinger. It's not the real thing. How can we draw a conclusion from Isaiah 23? Is that in verse 16, when this harlot is remembered, okay, so she's forgotten for 70 years, which also equals the period of one king. And we're saying that if this king is the USA, which also equals the sixth kingdom. From the study of Revelation 17. All right, so what we read that in verse 16 of Isaiah 23, that at this point when this Tyre is remembered, so she's forgotten all this time. She's forgotten all this time. And then she's remembered. But during the time that she's remembered, she sings. All right, she sings. That means what do we associate singing with? When we find someone singing, what does that tell us about their mood or about their spirit? There must be succeeding in something, right? They're happy, they're rejoicing for some good reason. And then we read in Ezekiel 27, so the harlot sings, but Ezekiel 27 also tells us who will sing. Ship of Tarshish, right? Ships of Tarshish. So the harlot sings and the ships of Tarshish sing, meaning, again, because, and we can make that association because we were told that the reason for the ship of Tarshish singing is because they are flourishing in economic wealth, in gold and iron and all these precious minerals that is sold on the economical market around the world. All right. So they're having great success in capitalism. And because harlot is associated with the dragon, we know that the kings of the earth who is committing fornication with this harlot, they also rejoice because they also prosper. So what we see here from this, from the understanding of this study, that during this time when she's remembered, she's flourishing, but this flourishing is short. Okay, and Revelation 17 limits it to 1 hour symbolically. It's just telling us that it's for a short time. And that brings us to the code of probation, where when we do another study of the seventh trumpet, which has to do with the third woe, we understand that the third woe happens at the close of probation. All right. So this east wind, again, we have already put it on the record that it's represented by radical Islam. So there's a warning, or there's a preview of things to come that came in 9/11, where there was again an economic boom or success that was broken. But here is where the real breaking takes place. This is the full effect of it, or the real deal. And this woman goes from singing, or these two, they go from singing to howling. All right. And we looked at a witness for it. If you go to Revelation 18, by the way, which is a chapter that also is dedicated to this time period of the son-in-law when this is fulfilled. So this has to do with the third angel's message and the empowerment of the second, right? Third angel's message has to do with the second empowered and also the third empowered at the loud cry. And when we look at verse 5, Revelation 18:5 says, for her sins, so she's remembered, so it tells us why she's remembered. Understanding that it's the papacy, they're representing the papacy, so we can, with that association, we can see prophecy speaking about the same power. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her according to her work in the cup which she had filled to her double. All right. And if you go over to chapter 16 of the same Revelation, verse 19, we have another mention of her being remembered. 16 verse 19, and the great city, again, this great city in Bible prophecy is the papacy. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Okay, so this is where God remembers this threefold union again. So I will reach there. So we'll go into the counterfeit that is made up of a threefold union known as Mystery Babylon. All right, so this is where God remembers Mystery Babylon, headed by the papacy, and it's during a time when it's flourishing, but this flourishing is short-lived. And when he brings judgment upon Mystery Babylon, they go from singing to howling. Okay, and if you will just read the entire chapter of Revelation 18, verse 6 onward down, you will see that story. Okay, so this is why we, again, this is a very important information that this east wind blows again at the close of probation. It doesn't blow at the sundial, right? So even though right now we see the activity going on with Syria, and the overturning of its government, relating to different factions of Islam, radical Islam, it won't affect the flourishing of this threefold union or the seventh kingdom. All right, so this is also the seventh kingdom. Just going here. It will flourish for a time, a very short time, and then it will receive its judgment. So we will see Islam all the way until the close of probation, not in the Sunday time period. In the sense of it bringing hurt or death to this threefold union, to the enemies of God's church. All right, so what we see when we apply the study of Revelation 9, that first Islam hurts. It hurts first the armies of Rome, and then it kills. Okay, so Islam comes in two parts, right? Their work, their effect. So that there was where we left off. Is there any question that a good reminder of what you understand so far in our movement? Any questions so far? Are you following me?
Lucas, just one quick question on where on the board under the 1 hour and now the seventh, where you wrote Revelation 18 and the third angel and the second angel empowered and the third angel empowered. Do you mind just reviewing that quickly? Because I just
Okay.
notes and missed some of what you said with that.
All right. So what I understood that we have concluded in this movement is that Revelation 18 fulfills at the Sunday law, right? It fulfills here. What Jeff did, again from the review of Millwright history, he saw Revelation 10 here, and an angel coming down to empower the message. So he thought that he had license, or from a prophetic understanding or a prophetic license to also put Revelation 18 here. Okay, and from this understanding is where we have our vowels. This is how a couple of our vowels were developed from this understanding, and it still helps us to understand certain studies or to establish ourselves as a movement on the front line, but this is just the understanding of putting Revelation 18 at 9/11 as a fulfillment is not fully true, because in reality it's fulfilled or begins to fulfill at the Sunday law. All right, and that was made clear during 2017. Well, for me, that's when I understood it, and it caused some shaking because it was like saying to Jeff that you're wrong, but it was important to understand. So when we study Revelation 18 verse 1 to 3, we see, if we will just quickly go over it, we see, after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. So that matches Revelation 10. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the whole of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So again, we see that the term Babylon is fallen is used in verse 2, and that is associated with the second angel's message. But again, from all the development of our studies, we place the second angel's message here. And then we put the informant at the Sunday law. So the second angel's message arrives at 9:11, but it's empowered in Revelation 18 at the Sunday law as well. And then at the same time, the third angel's message arrives at the Sunday law at the beginning waymark of the Sunday law, and then it's empowered at the Lord's cry. And so here is where we put the informant to be specific. Okay, so that's what I understand. That's how I understand the application, or this is how I understand we can put Revelation 13 on our lines. All right. So it could be wrong, but that's my understanding. Did that help, Debbie?
Excellent, Lucas. Yes, it did. Perfect. Thank you.
Good. So you're welcome. So let me quickly move on. So I just want to remind you of another study that Jeff did that has to do with the true line and the counterfeit line that we know to be the mystery of iniquity. All right, so this was a very helpful study at the time as well. And to me, it still has some importance to us understanding this time period. We are grappling with to understand when it's the beginning, or where we're at this present time. We see that from Moses to Samuel, it took 190 years. Okay, and then from Samuel to Jehoiakim, which was the last king of Jerusalem, you see another 490. Okay, and from then on, they went into a 70-year captivity because of rebellion against God. Okay, after that captivity, they were taken out of that captivity by the way of three decrees, right? Had to do with Cyrus, and Artaxerxes. Upon the third decree, they were taken out, and that marked the beginning of the 2300 prophecy. And this 2300 days brought us to 1844, October 22nd, to be specific. But this, again, what we studied, what we went through during our review, we saw that the culmination to October 22nd, 1844, the effect of it had to do with step message or changes message. Now within this 300 days, we know that there's a cross, and then there's another 490 here. That brought us to the cross, and then the stoning of Stephen. Okay, so this is two line, and then there's a counterfeit. Just for your information, this period here had to do with church, and then this has to do with state power, church power, state power, right? Because Samuel was the last priest and prophet, or the last prophet, and then they asked for a king, they gave it Saul, and Jehoiakim was the last. So when you look at the counterfeit to it, we see, now this has to do with the 2520, and so this has to do with Jerusalem or Judah, and this one has to do with Israel. Being Israel went off into captivity first, and being mingled with the heathen, they become the Gentiles. So they would represent those who are not a part of God's church. So you have God's church, and then you have the world. And this line is governed by the 2520 that begins in 723, and then it goes 1260, and it brings us to 538 AD. So this is BC, AD, and then from 538 you have another 1260. That brings us to 1798. Okay, so but then in this model, we see the reverse, we see state, and then during the time of the papacy, we see church power. So that's a little difference about it. But then according to, or from the study of Isaiah, the application of the study of Isaiah, we see from 1798, remember, papacy is forgotten for how long? For 70 years, right? She's forgotten for 70 years, according to the time of one king, the time of the sixth kingdom of the United States, until she's remembered. Okay, and we have concluded that she's remembered at the Sunday law. So the Sunday law, again, the development that brought us to understand the Sunday law has to do with the first, second, and third angel's message. Arguing that Revelation 18, which has to do with the third in particular, is fulfilled at the Sunday law. All right, so also we see Daniel 11, verse 41, fulfilled at the Sunday law as well. And then from Acts 27, we see Myra, the city of Garcia, found also that waymark. Okay, so she sings during this period, and then there's a howling. And this howling where again comes with the third war, the return of radical Islam to destroy the army of Babylon. Right? So this takes us to the close of probation. In here, when we reach 1844 on this line of God's people, or the true church, when we reach 1844, we know the fulfillment is the investigative judgment. On this line, when the paper say, or the triple union of Mr. Babylon reaches its judgment, it's an executive judgment.
Lucas, say that again, please. The executive judgment, is that what you were saying?
These two lines, they kind of reflect each other, but one is the true and one is the counterfeit. Right? And the true leads us to an investigative judgment in 1844, October 22nd. Begins the investigative judgment where God's people is given probationary time to understand the changeless message. Because remember, the call of God's people is always to win souls for God's kingdom. So they're given that time in order for them to prepare themselves to give the message and to be saved at Christ's second coming, to be sealed and saved. All right, so that's their work, but the counterfeit is the power of Satan. So it's there to counter this work of the stranger's message that is done by God's people. So when it comes to its climax, there's no investigative judgment for it. It has already filled its cup. Its judgment comes here when it's remembered. Okay, but this judgment is allowed to carry on for 1 hour for a short time. Does allow it to rejoice in its flourishing, but what comes is its judgment that's followed. Its judgment is what follows, right? So this is what we also can help us to understand that if we're not in God's church, then when the Sunday law comes, we might not be able to see where and I'm talking about God's church in the sense of Seventh-day Adventists, because from the study of Acts 27, Elder Tess mentions that there's no distinguishing of the movement and the church in that study. We're all one body, we're all Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, so when we look at Daniel 11, verse 41, if we can just quickly go there to refresh our memory. Daniel 11. verse 41, that is fulfilled at the Sunday law. It says, he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Okay, so is that the Sunday law where we see two classes, where we see one class escape out of this threefold union, and also we see one class fall into the hands of this satanic power. So I'm saying because they're singing, those who fall into it may not be able to come out or to see their doom before it is too late. So by the time the close of probation comes, what follows is executive judgment. This is what this study of Isaiah 23 and also Ezekiel 27 is telling us. Okay? Was that clear, David? Did that help?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Lucas.
Okay. All right, so is there any question? Does anyone know how much time I have remaining? Can someone help me out with that?
You probably have about another 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
What was written on the true line, just on your arch from the Sunday law to the close of probation? Yes.
Well, for this line, it brings us to October 22nd.
Right, but what's that word at the top between the arrows?
For that issue.
I just want to know
Annabelle?
what the word is at the top between the arrows.
It's 2300.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank
Which
you.
began in 457 BC, right? So this is 2. All right, so this is the time prophecy that we know we find in Daniel chapter 8 and 9. That has to do with the sanctuary. All right. Not getting into details of it, but I'm sure we are familiar with that. So what this study also shows is that this 2300 days rules over the 2520. Right. So because this history lines up with the 2300 days, this also would be symbolic of the 2300 days ruling over the 2520. And we know that 2520 brings us to judgment in the story of Belshazzar. Right? It's the same, right? Who was overcome or overthrown by Cyrus? Again, because of their drunkenness. Okay, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me clear this up. If there's no question you were able to follow. So I'm going to get into the study of Acts 27 in particular now, because like I said, and we all know by now that it's that study that has all information to give us the time for the Sunday law waymark. Okay, so I'm going in that direction now. Just let me clean this a little bit more better.
He's such a good teacher. Using his hand, his bare hand? No, he has it clean.
Okay. All right, so let's move on.
Just want to make note that Annabelle's mic is still on.
Okay, thanks.
Have it in
I just muted it, Annabelle.
Okay. So coming back to study, or coming to the story of Acts 27. We know there's a fifth line. Acts 27 brought to us a fifth line. That is represented by the ship of Adramyttium. And the waymarks of this fifth line begins in 1989 and it goes to 9/11 and then it goes on to 2021, which is the midnight cry. And then to, let me just put that down here instead. You don't want to line it up with the places that the ship passed. And then it goes, this takes us to the Sunderland. And this is represented by Myra. This is Cyprus. Zion. And then Caesarea. Okay, so on this fifth line, what other tests brought us to understand, or led our minds to understand through this study in detail, but I'm just doing a concise review of it, is that it's at Cyprus where the Sixth Kingdom falls and the seventh arrives. Okay, so that's very important information because now it has to do with the time, right? It begins at 2021. The Sixth Kingdom begins to fall. Now, if we go back to the horns, can anybody quickly remind us of what these two horns represented that made this kingdom lamb-like? All right, so
Republic,
two horns.
Protestantism, the two horns.
Yeah. Go ahead. It represented who or what?
Republicanism and Protestantism.
And Protestantism. Okay. Let me just flip this around because I want to make a point.
Sorry, Lucas, I was going to say it in the opposite order because I was thinking that too. But
Wow.
anyway, thank you.
Okay. From our previous study, when was it that, which hand was broken first? Because we know that as I mentioned at the beginning, that we see that Revelation 13 takes us through a transition where this, and then White explains it in details in several of her writings, specifically Greek controversy, that this power or this kingdom, the USA, it begins innocent, which is represented by these two horns. But then this innocence transforms into a persecuting power, right? Or giant power. So we see a transition. So my question to you is, in our previous study, when did we, or according to the study of Acts 27, because this was this who really pointed it out to us, when was this first horn broken? Does anyone remember?
In the
Anyone?
Millerite history?
Okay, right. Specifically when? Can you help us with more detail? In what year? Anybody else? It will be
Is it
around
when
April.
the second angel's message is rejected?
Right.
April
Right.
19th.
That could be associated with April 19, 1844, right? When the angel message arrived, and the church or the movement began to proclaim the fall of Babylon, but they were more referring to the apostate church of Babylon, or the adulterers. So here we can mark first horn broken. So my question is to you, when did Eretz say the second horn was broken? Because she also, in her studies, series of studies, made known to us when the second horn was broken. Does anyone remember? Or would like to give a guess? So if I just draw this line over, when was it? So the first is broken here. When is the second broken? Anyone? Take a guess.
2001.
2001?
Might be wrong.
Anyone else?
Come on, guys. Can you help me? Someone help me.
Anybody else?
Maka, I would, but my mind is absolutely blank. And Lucas, we should be able to even guess. You're right.
Let's come close, mate.
I know we used to teach that it was 9/11, I think, but I'm not sure if that changed.
Yeah, but I guess the reason we should teach that 9/11 it was 9/11 was because we didn't have a correct understanding of that waymark or the events that occurred at 9/11 or in the year of 2001. Remember, we are still clinging on to conspiracy theories. So the Patriot Act and those uh, legislations that were passed that were good, we thought were bad, right? And then the letters came and made that clear to us that that was a good thing. So
Lucas, I'll go on a limb and
it would be
say
a
the Sunday.
2-to-1. Can you
Sorry,
repeat?
I'll
Sure.
go out on a limb and say the Sunday law.
Okay, so you would say the Sunday law? Okay,
And when, you know, the republicanism is dead now, you know,
uh-huh.
MAGA has taken over
So what evidence would you have? What information would you have that, or do you have right now that help you to say it's a Sunday law? Give you confidence to say.
Well, I would say the evidence, and I could be absolutely wrong, but the evidence would be the RNC, July 18th, 2024, where Trump has full control. And I mean, it gets played out at the November 5th election with the trifecta and the popular vote. But it happens at what I believe is the Sunday law, July 18th, 2024. He's basically crowned king. But no
Anyone else have a different opinion or different understanding?
or that can
So
add more.
by saying that, maybe are you still clinging on to there is conclusion that the Sunday law began or the beginning waymark of the Sunday law is at is in July?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so anybody else? I guess there's nobody else, so I'm not gonna put that date anymore, because like I said, her breaking one of the rule of the methodology, importing the meaning of flood to Maximus Burgess, kind of like threw me off, so I can't back that anymore to a full extent, but it's in the time period of the Sunday law, I would say. So more specifically, what Ella taught during her entire series of study on Oxford and 7 is that it began in 2016. The Harn broke in 2016. And we all know what happened in 2016, Trump first election. So it's associated with Trump. And it's broken here, but it's seen at the Sunday law. Okay. So there's a development here. And this is how she puts it. Let me just quickly go to this note that kind of help us to see it. She puts it this way. She says, that in 2016, this is an election year, the Harn is broken, right? And Trump became the president of the United States. So the Republican Harn broken. Trump is president. he comes in with this spirit of being a dictator. So he's a dictator according to her studies and what we should already agree with, that he's a dictator from the beginning, right? He doesn't suddenly become a dictator in 2016. He has always been a dictator. So he comes in with that spirit of dictatorship, but he's restrained. He cannot do as he please in the government or with the government, even though he wants to. Then that brings us to 2019. And again, he's restrained. What happened in 2019 that proved that he was restrained? What occurred specifically to Donald Trump that showed that, you know what, you just can't come and do anything you want in that seat or in that power? Remember that incident with
The December call with
Huh?
Zelensky? The December
with
call
Zelensky?
with,
So
Pardon me?
what ended up becoming the result of him trying to quid pro quo with Zelensky?
right,
He
well,
was
he was
he was what?
impeached.
He was impeached, right? Or they attempted to impeach him, the Republican Party then
Yes.
was it first. So he is restrained there. And then in 2021, he's restrained again. How did this one happen? What was this associated with? So this one was associated with the quid pro quo. What was this one associated with? This there was another impeachment here, but this one was associated with what? The January 6th event, right? Remember, the election was in 2020. Trump didn't like the result of the election, and he caused his mob to cause an insurrection at the Capitol, at Capitol Hill. And then we reach the Sunday law, where he's gonna be restrained, but at the same time, not at the same time, but later on, he's gonna be let loose. Okay, so this has to do with the Seventh Kingdom, in the time of the Seventh Kingdom. All right, so we see, so she says that this is how we can be able to tread, the rise of Donald Trump all the way to the Sunday law and be confident that he's the one who is going to be the king that rules over the Seventh Kingdom. And we can see another witness to this. This here. You can see it. In 2014, you see a purge of the Great Old Party, right? And then in 2019, we see the GOP refuse to impeach Trump. Again, in 2021, you see GOP confused again. And then we see them making or crowning Trump as king of the RNC. Okay, so all this information, which has been very useful and helpful to us, has made things very clear enough for us to be able to now use our methodology to identify the son-in-law waymark or the beginning of it. And also we're able to know that this is the time when the message goes to the world or to the Netherlands. But at the same time, it's an awakening for each and every one of us to get up and trim our lamps, right? And if we do not, then we'll be found among the foolish virgins and be lost, according to Daniel 11:41. So we either are among those who are sealed or among those who receive the mark of the beast. And that has to do with our eternal salvation or eternal damnation. All right, so this was something that we got from a very important information from the study of Acts 27.
Lucas, would you read just your last line, the middle two waymarks, the
This one,
GOP refused, I can't make out the last word, and same with the third
refused
waymark.
impeachment.
Oh, refused impeachment, thank you. And what's
And
the
then
next?
in 2021, they refused the impeachment again.
Again,
So,
okay, super,
and then
thank you.
at the son-in-law, well, not at the son-in-law, but somewhere around there, in the time period of, let's call it the agitation, and they crowned him as king. It could be then, again, the reason I'm saying it different now is because of what Elder Parmenter pointed out to us in the movement last Sabbath study. All right, so let me move on because I want to reach a point here in this few minutes that I have. I want to take us now into looking at the everlasting gospel versus mystery of iniquity, which in other words we will see as the true versus the counterfeit. And so we have the everlasting gospel. And so when we look at it from this point of view, we can see that in Daniel chapter 2, we see that the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, or the image, is a counterfeit to what? The counterfeit today, you see two bodies represented, right? So the statue is a counterfeit to the mountain, right? Let me just check this. Okay, so when you compare it, the image or the statue that has to do with Babylon, Medo Persia, the seven kingdoms of the satanic power versus God's kingdom, we see that we see that the counterfeit is the image and the true is the mountain. But then when we look at it in more modern times, we see that the papacy papacy becomes the counterfeit to Adventism, right? And we know that history was in the Millerite history in the White time period, where it was a Sabbath versus Sunday issue, especially in 1888 to early 1900 time period. And then in today's time, early today's time, it has had to do with Protestant America. Specifically the evangelicals. They are the counterfeit again they are the counterfeit to this movement. Okay, this movement that we're in today. So right here we see the true gospel, because then we see the changes message. Return, right? I'm talking from 1989 as the movement developed or progresses. And then but then there's a dynamic here where, because remember the ship of Alexandria goes off course in 1863, and by the time Eleuthis she used the second ship to parallel the first, which is the ship of Alexandria. These two institutions, the USA and so I'll just put USA here. USA and the SDA, they are abiding in debt. So by the time we reach 1989, these two institutions are abiding in debt. But then, or because they are abiding in debt, what happens in 1989? 1989, according to that ship, a message is given, right? To Felix and Festus. Who does Felix and Festus represent? They represent state.
State.
And Agrippa represents church or SDA. Particular. A message is given to them, and for the state or for the government of the United States as an institution, the message is given to them that there's a new world order that is to be introduced, and this new world order should be multilateral. Okay? And we know that because it was Gorbachev, according to, again, just repeating what the study brought, that it was Mikhail Gorbachev who introduced this term, New World Order, and this was a good idea because it would have allowed all the nations of the earth to keep each other in check, and in so doing, democracy would prevail and survive. But in 1991, George Bush Sr., he didn't like this interpretation of the New World Order, and he made a twist to it that where he says that and this New World Order will be, it will look like this. It will be the USA being among France, Germany, Italy, and Russia. And all the kingdoms would be held in check by each other. That was Gorbachev's idea of the New World Order. But George Bush's idea is that his idea was that the USA rules over all the other powers. So this is multilateralism, this is unilateralism. And the message that came to the institution of USA was to choose this form of world governance, but instead they chose this one, and that was what was going to lead them to shipwreck. Okay. Now for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the message that came to them was the understanding of Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45. And this message was designed to awaken the church. Again, remember they went into the Laodicean condition from 1863. They were spiritually dead. This message was what was designed to resurrect them as the dry bones being resurrected in Ezekiel 37 to come to life to do that work that God called them to do, but they refused to accept the message, and they also, as an institution, seal their doom for shipwreck. All right. So, so because of that, because the Seventh-day Adventist Church chose not to take up the last message of salvation and hope, they also became a counterfeit. And they became a counterfeit again to the movement. Right? So, and we can see that because, especially when the 2520 was reintroduced and understood through several studies, especially studies of Elder Parmenter, the Seventh-day Adventist Church hated that message. Okay, so so that's where we're at, and then we're going to look into the threefold union. All right, so if you could see that the Seventh-day Adventist Church also becomes, sorry, I have this back way, huh? Somebody told me. Let me just leave it here and change this. Sorry for the mix-up.
Lucas, I was going to, at some convenient point that out to you, but you caught it. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so that's that, and then. Okay, so that's the correction, just to make that, and then with this in mind, just keep this in mind. I will move on, right? So I have two classes, always, from the beginning of time, from the fall of Adam and Eve, we see these two classes of people. One thing got first and the other one contradicting it, causing souls to be lost, while the other class or the other group or allies with God to save souls.
Lucas, we'll probably have you wrap up in the next
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go with me, let me just wrap up this. I'm reaching my conclusion, yes. So if you go to me back to Revelation 17. And we focus our attention to verse 9. Revelation 17, verse 9 says, and here is the mind which had wisdom. The seven heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Okay. So we know that she's wearing a beast that has 7 heads. We saw that in Revelation 13 and 17 that these 7 heads represent Babylon all the way to USA in the 6th and 7th form, in the lamb-like beast and the dragon beast. So that is like in John takes that and he gives us more information, or he gives us a clue, a very important clue, that these 7 heads are also 7 mountains. So let me just put up my title here. What John just did, if we go to Daniel chapter 2, we see God's church is likened to a mountain, right? But then what happens? A stone gets cut out, right? Stone gets cut out. So this represents the SDA church. This is the movement. So John tells us, he gives us information that, and this is what I've drawn from it, so this is my understanding, is that when the 7th kingdom comes, or just about when the 6th is moving on to the 7th, there's a stone that is cut out from this institution as well, right? And this stone is the movement for God's side, and this stone is Trumpism, which is a movement too, or a counterfeit movement for the evil side. Okay? And so this is what we should see in the time period of the 7th kingdom, or the Sunday time period. Now, let me give you a little bit of evidence to nail that down. Let me compare it on a line, on 2 lines, just as we did with Isaiah 23. Okay, so We're not looking at fractals anymore. We're looking at the big line of Notch Park 4000. We see that begins in 1989, takes us to 9/11. It goes to Sunderland, another provincial, second coming. So this is the line of the true king. So here we reach a point where there's a king of the north and there's a king of the north. And you have the true king of the north versus the counterfeit king of the north. Okay. And this counterfeit line, my argument is, begins in 2016, takes us to 2020, then it brings us to June 24, 2022. Brings us to the New World Order, and then the decree. Now, if you ask me how did I come up with these waymarks? The way I come up with these waymarks, but when I was reviewing LRTS studies, I went through a whole heap of them. She gave me a particular information concerning the waymark of Concord. Let me just quickly try find out information before my time run out. She says, the waymark of Concord carries with it certain properties that connect the histories of the priests, Levites, and Netinims. Now, I didn't take time to remind you that these three groups of people are woven into the study of the institutions, right? So the ship represents the institution, but which produced the fifth line, but also within it, within that story, there's woven these three groups of people. So when we look at these three lines on the lines of the on the fractal lines, she's saying that the Concord, the waymark of Concord that you will find in these lines from dispensation to dispensation, it is like a garment that is stitched together. It's threaded that it's a thread that can be stitched from 2016, which is a US election, to 2020, another US election. So she gave us this tool, and these two waymarks are Concord. So what I did, I continued to trace Concord through the priests, the Levites, and Netinims. And this is what I found, that all these waymarks are Concord. And you can do that exercise for yourself and see it. All right. So just let me finish up what I'm saying here. So just remember, this is the counterfeit line. I want to explain it a little bit more this way, because this is what she thought that in order for us to see this waymark, we can go back 10 years. And if you go back 10 years, just as how you could come back here 10 years and come to 1979, and we could see events in 1979 that establishes 1989. The same way we can come back 10 years, and that will take us to 2006. And guess what occurred in 2006? 2006 was when Trump had the affair with Stormy Daniels, that one night sexual intercourse that came back to plague him here. All right. And we know that he came back recently in just before the this other final election. Okay. So remember, Trump was restrained from Waymark to Waymark in the line that I drew up. Here marks a turning time. Just as all 9/11 is a turning time. Because what happened here, he lost the election, right? He lost the election, Biden came in, and it created a turning time for us as God's people to get to understand the message clearer. Okay. Again, in 1989, we can see Jerry Falwell Sr. endorsed Trump. I'm sorry, endorsed Reagan and Bush. Here we see Jerry Falwell Jr. in 2016, he endorsed Trump. Okay, so remember George Bush wanted to introduce a new world order, which is a dictatorship. And again, the son of Jerry Falwell Sr. endorsed Trump, who also is in favor of a new world order, a dictatorship. Okay, another thing you can see Trump intended to run for election in 1989. He wanted to run for election, but he had a financial crisis. So he fell out quickly out of the race. So what I noticed mentioned is that we could have seen Trump here. But again, God, in mercy, didn't allow him to be president here, being a dictator from the beginning, because we wouldn't have been able to be prepared as we are today. So here is where we see Trump. He could have been president here, but here is where he becomes president. Okay, so this has to do with Stormy Daniels. All right, so I will just leave you with that for now. I could get into it. I wanted to get into it and give you more information of how that could be true, but I ran out of time. One more thing, just before I close in prayer. In 2016, another proof that helped me to come to this conclusion is that in 2016 there was an alliance between Trump and Putin, and Trump used Cambridge Analytica to be able to manipulate the votes so he could win. At the same time, Putin used the IRA also to be able to manipulate the election and influence the election in favor of Donald Trump. So all that we see here, we see the King of the North here. You see alliance with the King of the North, and see both of them. This time we see Reagan as negotiating with Gorbachev, and here we see the same thing. You see Putin and Trump coming together to interfere in the US election. Right? So I will leave you with that for now. And I hope this study has been useful to you. I hope I did not rush anything. Is there any question? Was it helpful?
It's an amazing study, Lucas. And I hope that you can do another session doing that, the last part more slowly
Yeah,
someday.
because again, the purpose of the entire study was to bring us to where, to prove that we're in the Sunday time period. But again, we need to, as the parameter showed us last week, that it's not so straightforward. All right, but praise the Lord, we understand this much. At least we know that we're in the, at least in the agitation into the Sunday law, or already into the Sunday law, going towards another concord. And if that's the case, this other concord is this one, the New World Order. This is Trump New World Order. So this is the concord after the Sunday law. If the Sunday law is July 2024, right? This one. So so let's close with a word of prayer. Loving God, we are thankful that we were able to go through the study and cover some more material, that more light that you have given to us for us to understand and apply to our lives, and also to understand its external events and to know where we're at. Pray that each one of us may be fully awakened to our lamp stream, and that we will be ready to proclaim the loud cry that is coming up very soon. We need your leading, we need your guidance. We're at a point where we're grappling with some information, help us to finally come together in concord as a movement, to come together as one truth, one understanding, so that your work may continue. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, Lucas, thank you very
I want to thank you for your time, and God bless you.
well. Amen. God bless. And thank you, Lucas, very, very much. I mean, you covered a lot. And as Annabelle, well, you went over time, but that's okay. We all hung in there. And as Annabelle said, oh, let me stop the recording. Forgive me to do that.